Alrighty then. Alrighty then. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Testing. Testing.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, man. How we doing? How we doing? How we doing?
Yeah,
How we
man.
doing? Not
Yeah,
bad.
man.
Not bad. Not bad.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
hey, everybody. How we doing? Welcome to another episode of the Living Room with me, Andre, and Mark. No, usually, of course, is usually Philip, but Philip is busy today, so he couldn't make it with us today. So we holding on for him, but I'm sure he's watching. So if you have any comments, say hi to him as well. Hey, if this is your first time, you're on the We Global platform, and this is the Living Room. If you haven't before, hit follow, hit share, whatever it is. So you can follow us on Facebook, you can follow us on Instagram, on YouTube, and on Twitter as well. And bring in all your friends as well to have a watch and let's have a good old Caribbean conversation. Let's just get to it. How is it going, buddy?
You know the Philip fan club there now going crazy.
Yeah. He probably in the kitchen.
Yeah. We'll see what the framework look like.
Making that something.
Yeah, man. Going good. Business as usual.
How
Business
things
as
at
usual.
North, man?
Things good, man. Things good.
I'm Blackman.
I taking it easy. Looking forward to half term already.
Already? When the term don't start, man?
Man, don't mind, man. You know how it is. Just
Hey,
can't
Dennis.
wait. Can't wait. How you doing, Dennis? Good to see you, man. Can't wait.
You looking forward to half term already, man?
Man,
What
it's
is
only
that?
2 weeks. It's only 2 weeks away, man. You know. So and
In school.
it's not that far to go.
The
It's not
school
that
thing
far
got
to
you.
go.
Hey, Brandon, the school thing got you already. Figo already.
Man, you know how it is. You know how it is. Just need a break now. You just do that as well. You just kind of put your holiday around the kids' holiday, or you don't do that. Who is
The
Philip?
main holiday is not necessarily half term. Who's Philip? Jeez, that was quick.
Wow.
That was quick. That is.
Wow.
No, usually around the main holidays, not necessarily around half term, because half term is just a week. So, on the odd time, hey Karen,
Okay.
on the odd time that it might be 2 weeks, which is very rare, I might do that. Hey Betty, but usually it's a case where I would go holiday around the time of the normal holidays, so Easter, Christmas, summer. But half term,
You making sport, yeah. I just need a break every 6 weeks, like your children.
well, you stay holiday at half term.
I mean,
No,
can't wait,
your
man.
vacations get on so fast.
Can't wait, man. Get me out of here for a week at least. I like the
I
break,
might take
man.
a day here and there or something like that. I might like the Friday or the Monday or something like that. But by and large, I wouldn't take the whole week because it goes so quick. And now I'm in the GCSE year, my older daughter as well too. So all she give me doing is sitting down in the books doing stuff. So that's what I can be like this year. So I'm really doing that this year.
Sure, her GCSE results will be better than your CXCs, but anyway, that's another show.
Well, that's a very low bar. That is a very low bar. So I was, if you can't do better than that, you've been at school long, but not often. I
Remember
can
them
tell you
days?
that.
Oh my word! I would not want to go back there. Thank you very much.
No. I'm sure she would definitely outdo me when it comes to the whole GCSE or level thing. That ain't gonna not be an issue.
Yeah.
That ain't gonna be an
I
issue.
I've started to tell myself school was not for me. School is not for me. That's my excuse.
You think so? It wasn't for you. It was for you,
School not
but for
for me.
different reasons.
Well,
So I don't say it wasn't for me because I had a very good time at school.
well, look, let me tell you, I just tell people all the time when we got friends wrong, there's only one storyteller here, really. You know, I got stories aplenty.
Exactly. I had plenty stories I could tell for school. I enjoy myself at school. So I would say it wasn't for me.
That was my
Eh,
problem. I had too much fun.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun at school. But the whole academic stuff come a little bit later on. I wasn't ready for that kind of stuff at school. School was just socializing, enjoying yourself, playing football, going home early from floods, considering we were in school.
Yep.
And pretty much that was it.
5 years of greatness for me, man, but not so much in the books. But anyway,
Exactly. It was good. I had a good time, man. I can't
Fantastic.
complain at all.
I'm sure
So you
she'll
get
do
to-
well, though.
Yeah, she can be good. So you get it to this week, man.
Man, this week was all about trying to. There's a little bit of a different thing emerging here in the UK that all of us who work in transport are trying to understand. So, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, is a big thing that is starting to take off. What days you was going to the office?
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
See, that's a big thing that taking off across the country at the moment. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So the typical Monday, Friday thing that we've known historically is starting to fade away. So trying to understand that. And a fascinating thing, I was talking to my dad this week, and a fascinating thing came to me, and he was talking about vaccine in Barbados. And there seemed to
Oh
be this
Lord.
thing in Barbados where people waiting for specific vaccines. So I want the Pfizer, or I want this one. I was like, we
That ain't
talk.
just Barbados though. That ain't just
What's going on?
it's a Caribbean wide thing. I saw
Yeah.
it in Trinidad. I saw it in St. Vincent as well. Even in the Bahamas too. When you watch the news, it was almost as if when the Pfizer vaccine touched down at the airport, as if everybody was going, "Hallelujah!
Right.
We
Yeah.
finally got the right one." And I'm like, "What is this madness?" But ain't just Barbados. But yeah, I think everybody got this. Not everybody. Let me generalize too much, but a lot of people have this thing about which one they're taking and which one they're not taking. So that's an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, I've found that rather peculiar actually, because it just seems that people are prepared to just sit and wait and wait and wait until the vaccine that they want arrives. But at the same time, there's a lot of exposure in the community, and it just feels like it just seems a little bit strange to me. So that kind of took me back a little bit when he was talking about it. It was like, okay, fair enough, but it's a
No,
thing,
but
as you say.
I think that is a I think a media, social media, and what's not. And people look when people say do your own research, people gonna do their own research. The issue with doing your own research is that you can see a whole heap of things out there that we necessarily, in we layman terms, can't really decipher fully. And there's this thing about the Pfizer is the best one. It
Pfizer,
giving 90
Pfizer.
whatever percent what is efficacy. It
Efficacy,
is,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
despite the fact that many vaccines don't even get so high. Many normal vaccines that we normally take don't even get so high. But for whatever reason, that's the one that people saying they want, and that's the thing that going on. Although I did see, was it Trinidad that I saw in the papers this week saying that they might have to give away vaccines before they spoil.
Man, look, a lot of
I
these
think it was
Caribbean
Trinidad
nations
that I
gotta be
saw
giving away
that.
vaccines, man. Because for the length of time that they've had these vaccines and for the lack of take up, there must be a lot of vaccines that are earmarked to spoil at the moment. Surely.
Well, I think that's the thing that people not really talking a lot about.
No, they're
About
keeping that
that is
quiet.
the knock-on effect. But the thing is, but who you can get to, because at the moment all across the Caribbean got the same
It's the
issue.
same
Nobody ain't
attitude.
taking it. So who you can get to, you got to find somebody extra regionally now to give vaccines to. But I think that's a real issue across the region at the moment. People not taking it, so therefore, these particular vaccines, especially, have a certain shelf life. And
They
then there's
do.
the infrastructure to deal with the Pfizer. How many can we actually bring in? Do we have the infrastructure to deal with that? That's the other thing there too.
And if
You
that's
know,
gonna spoil, that'd be crazy, man. Crazy. But I saw the battle lines being drawn as well around employers and employees in related to vaccines. And this just seems to be this constant effect now
hey
of
Marlies.
a really, really divided society, and the battle lines are really being established now with employees getting lawyers, employers digging in, and it just feels as though, man,
Hey
where is
Marlies.
this going to end?
Yeah, I mean,
Hi, Eunice.
so this is an interesting one, right? About mandatory vaccinations. In some places in the world, if you're going to visit them, you have no choice but to get a vaccine before you get on a plane of some kind, whether it be yellow fever or this or that or next and the third, right? So in some places that's normal. So vaccine mandates of some kind is not necessarily new. I guess where it is new in this case is you want me to take a vaccine now just to be able to live or to walk around or to go to work or what
Yeah.
have you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's new. So I don't know. This is an
It's
interesting
a
one.
yeah, it is. It's a tough one, and it's one that is going to really push the limits of the lawmakers and the employers and the social partnerships and so forth in different Caribbean territories, because we have to find a way to motor on and move forward now. I feel as though we're really stuck here now. We're stuck. We don't know how to turn, and the economy is grinding to a halt. Employers are digging their heels in. Employees are digging their heels in. Without business, you don't have jobs. Without jobs, you don't have economy. And it's this vicious cycle that we seem to be going around at the moment, man. It's hard to see where we're going to come out.
Yeah. It's just again one of those phrases I like to use is perfect storms. It's just one of them
Oh
perfect
yeah,
storms that really happening at this stage. And then what are you going to do? I sympathize with any government who is thinking about mandating vaccines, but at the same time,
hmm
I sympathize as well with people who say no to mandating vaccines. So it is a tough one. I see
yeah.
Australia pretty much just going and say, listen, you want to come work, take the vaccine, or don't bother to come in. And he ain't saying don't bother to come in and work from home. He's saying don't bother to come in.
hmm That's it.
Basically, that's what he's saying. I think it was the health minister I saw this week talking about that as well. And right around the world, I think that's happening. And maybe you might have to do it by certain sectors. I ain't saying this is what you got to do, but it might be, nursing home workers or
hmm
health workers in general or teachers or certain people in certain aspects of society that you might say, no, you're essential. This is what we know from a scientific perspective is going to help you. And we need to keep the country going. So you need to take this vaccine. So,
Yeah,
but we'll see how that
yeah,
goes. I wonder how people
yeah.
in the audience feeling about mandatory vaccines. I'm sure they'll tell us there.
Well, yeah. Just two things in the audience. Valerie Philip is he's probably in the kitchen. He's busy this evening, so he's not with us today. And I saw Jennifer asking mentioning World Mental Health Day. We'll come to that later on in the show as well,
Yes,
Jennifer.
definitely. We definitely
Absolutely.
come to that later on. Yeah, so that's an interesting one. I don't know what they're gonna do regarding that one.
I don't know either. I feel very afraid for where we go next in the Caribbean. I really do. I'm afraid. That's the truth.
I think because in before it was a communication issue for me and when and how we were communicating to our people. I think my view on it initially, we left too much up to international media to tell us
Yeah.
things that we needed to know without
hmm
recognizing that we actually have our own homegrown nuances that we need to get over into communication. And I think we left that a little bit too late. But no, I can't argue with the amount of communication that's going all over the place across the region. Now, is it too late? Some people are saying it is, but I don't know. So as I say, it's a little bit of sympathy there for on both sides. Where we get to, don't know. But I just hope we come out of it soon, and I hope from a resilience perspective that we show that, and that we could get over it over the
It
next
is the one
few
thing. It
months.
is the one thing we have going for us as people of the Caribbean. We are a resilient bunch. That's the truth. And this will knock us quite badly, but we will come back and we will come back strong because that's who we are as a people. Just wanted to mention something before we get into our show today,
Yeah, go
which I
ahead.
think is really important. The,
Indeed.
the loss of a Barbadian icon in Lord Radio who passed yesterday. There'll be a lot of people from Barbados and the wider Caribbean who will know of Lord Radio, and particularly his music from yesteryear, Yours Sincerely, Pardon on Me, Shirley, etc. And he was a giant in the entertainment industry, did a lot for getting the tourism product, particularly in Barbados, moving and making use of entertainment in a way in his generation that really build the foundation for others to follow. So he passed away, and we just want to extend our sympathies to his family.
Indeed, condolences to his family. He was indeed a giant and a pioneer of his time, really. A
Absolutely.
lot of what we see in Barbados is, and probably that by extension other parts of the region as well, the modern, entertainment industry he was at the forefront of in his day, contributed quite a lot. So condolences to his family and may he rest in peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is in Barbados, we don't often park ourselves there as being just hosting this show, but
No, actually,
this,
that's very true. Actually, we
it
do
is.
we don't do a full unless it's just the three of us talking. But
Yeah.
generally, we don't do a full Barbados subject matter. But I think this is beyond Barbados too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is a significant moment for the region. If you were in our show last Sunday, and by the way, if you haven't seen it, you need to. We
You
had
have to go see it.
leaders in the living room. Prime Minister Ralph Gonzalez from St. Vincent and the Grenadines joined us last week Sunday, and there's something that he said that was kind of resonating with me all. He said Barbados is not a brand. Barbados is an idea.
An idea.
And when you think about that and you think about the influence, the stability, the governance, the way, my Jamaican friends always like to tell me Barbados is just a dot, man. It's a small island, right? But a small island with a lot of significance, a lot of great, important history. And you feel as though we've come to a moment in time now that is so fundamental. And the question of Barbados becoming a republic on the 30th of November this year, as announced by the Prime Minister last year, is imminent. It's upon us.
It is.
So we really felt that it is time for us to have a conversation in the living room. There'll be lots of questions, no doubt, and we need to go on this journey with our audience today.
Yeah, I think so, because I think this is a real pivotal moment for Barbados, obviously, but I think for the region, and it'll be interesting to see the impact it has on the region. We know kind of the impact it's having here in the UK, because the guys here in the UK kind of half freaking out because Barbados is going to replace the Queen as the head of state. And so in the newspapers and BBC and different places, they're saying, oh my gosh, this shows our standing in the world is diminishing. Barbados leaving us. Oh, we lost Barbados.
Even Barbados is leaving us.
Which brings into the thing, the name, Lost Barbados. And they're saying that now too. so you really lost Barbados. Yes, you did. Yes, you have. It's about time too.
That was a good one.
But I think it's going to potentially, and I mean, one can argue about timing, because in the midst of COVID and economies needed to get themselves back on a good footing and stuff over the next couple of years. Don't know how much of the conversation this will play in the rest of the Caribbean. However, I think it will be part of the dialogue across the region over the next few years when Barbados does become a republic, because it'll be hard to ignore, given our relationship with the rest of the region, given our current leadership as well, and her standing amongst the people of the region, if not all the leaders. Her standing amongst the people of the leaders, as you see whenever she says stuff and presents herself in different parts of the world, it's always a Caribbean focus, and the Caribbean reacts as well. So I think her leadership is important in that process as well. So we thought it would be great for us to have that conversation. It's a Bajan discussion, but it's also a Caribbean discussion. And to help us with that, we have Dr. Ronnie Yearwood, and he's from my alma mater, so he's a brilliant fella. So proud of the strong.
Hope he did better.
I think he did significantly better than me at school.
Just have to get
UWI lecturer, social commentator. I think he would call himself as well. He writes articles in Barbados Today in different places. So we thought it'd be great, and we can just have a good Caribbean Bajan conversation on the Republic. A Bajan conversation. Let's bring Ronnie in.
Hi, Andre.
Sir.
Hi, Mark. Thanks
What's
for
happening,
having me.
man?
I'm good. How are you guys? I've just been listening to your chat. You were right. It is the equivalent of just having someone in your living room. So I'm enjoying this.
Hey, man, that's how we do it. That's how we do it.
That's what we like to do. So our audience will probably say hi. So guys, welcome Ronnie in. Welcome Ronnie in.
You clearly paid more attention down at Alexandra than my friend here.
I'm sure Andre paid the attention that he was supposed to pay. He is where he needs to be.
Okay.
Life has a way of doing that.
I can take that for
Per ardua ad astra, sir.
Exactly.
You see, I miss Phil, I know Phil would come in here with a uppercut.
I guess, Mark, you didn't have the privilege.
No.
No.
I was busy doing other things, but
we won't hold that against you.
Everyone can go to the Beacon of the North.
This conversation.
Northmen don't. The North. What's it? The North never forgets.
Oh dear.
Exactly. There we go.
Before this turned into the Alexandra alumni.
Current end, you mean it already is.
Exactly. You
Listen,
see, he ran blue already, Ronnie. That's the influence.
gee,
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, guys.
no man, no.
Sorry.
Listen, welcome to the living room. It's great. It's great to have you, and I know we are going to have a fairly wide-ranging discussion around the Republic. But before we get there, how are you? How your family doing? These are some dark days that
am
we're going
good.
through, man.
Family's doing well. If you hear occasional poos and ahs and a little slight crying, that's my 8-month-old son.
Oh, new dad. Congrats.
Yeah.
Boy, remember them days, boy. Wow, 8 months.
Yeah. So he's
Sleeping
he's
yet?
at that. Yeah, sleeping, but he's at the crawling stage. So not everything in the house is for a game. You have to put things away. You have to. It's just it's a riot.
Yes, your eyes in the back of the head and thing. No,
definitely having more fun than us. I can tell you.
I can imagine. That's good, man.
Wow.
But things are good. How about you guys?
We doing all right up here in the UK.
We okay. We trying to keep our mask on and survive.
That's as
Right?
much as you can do.
Exactly.
Survive and adapt.
Yeah.
That's exactly that.
So look, let's start. And you would have heard me said earlier about Barbados as an idea mentioned by Prime Minister Gonzalez last Sunday in the living room.
Yep.
And before we get too far down the line, let me ask you first of all, what is your view about the state of Barbados as we stand in 2021 as a nation heading towards 55 years of independence? What's your view about Barbados? Where we
This
stand?
sounds like, Mark, you see, you're trying to lure me into delivering a state of the nation address. I wish I put on my suit and tie.
You don't need that.
The anthem in the background, the flag, state of the nation.
You know,
Listen, I mean, if you want to get into the State of the Nation address, I'm not going to stop you. Give me a view, man.
No, I think Barbados is in a very interesting and a delicate situation at the moment. And it's not only because of COVID. Obviously, COVID kind of exposes a lot of underlying issues. And I think these issues have been issues for the last 20 years. These are not new things. I think what COVID does is that COVID brings them into focus in a way that perhaps we never paid attention to. And often when a country is doing well economically, we tend to ignore things because money is flowing, the party's on. The 90s. The 90s all over the world, everybody was drunk on money. Globalization was in, immigration was hit. Tony Blair was riding high the world, who Britannia, everybody
high now.
Exactly. Everybody was just having a good time, including the Caribbean. The offshore sector was, we were all living large, really on debt, borrowed money. It was until obviously the crash, and then, and we're still feeling the effects of that financial crash today. And that affected economies across the world, the Caribbean particularly.
Yeah.
And what it showed up is a lot of deficiencies that governments in Barbados and in the Caribbean have papered over. Not only
Give me some examples. Give me some examples of what you mean there.
So not only the last government before, but the one previously. Like, for example, one of the things is educational reform. That's a pet peeve of mine. And I think that our educational reform program in the 90s failed. Because it failed. By any objective measure, put politics, put party aside, it was not a success. We spent millions and millions and millions of dollars. We talked about educational reform. Nothing happened. Now, if that educational reform had happened then, now we're facing COVID. In fact, more than
different.
half the issues that we would be responding differently. Because technology would have been fully integrated in schools.
Yes.
Tablets would have been a norm. Your books would be online. All these things that we are stressing about now would not have been an issue. So it goes to show that your policy, and I think sometimes people overlook this, say, oh, it's this policy, it's nerdy, that's for wonks. Well, you're paying attention. But if your policy is done properly and it's set right, the effects kick in 5 years down the line.
Of course.
10, 15 years,
Exactly.
Of course.
So if our educational reform had worked then, half the things that we are now still battling with, technology in school, kids not having access to Wi-Fi, they don't have tablets,
Wow.
All of these are things that we would have solved along the way. And that's just one example in terms of how we paper over the cracks. For example, another example is issues of governance and
Yeah.
corruption, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
people start to pay attention to the Auditor General's report when it looked like we were running out of money. Go back to read the Auditor General's reports from the 90s, switch
Nothing
the
new.
name of the parties. It's the same
Nothing
thing.
new.
Nothing
Yes.
new. But the point is, we started to pay attention when things
When.
got bad. When things
Yeah,
were
yeah, yeah,
good,
yeah.
nobody was paying
Nobody
attention
paying
to these
attention
things.
because
Nobody was
I could.
talking about governance and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and reform and corruption and anti-corruption legislation. These things were not hot topic issues. A few, people, academics or others would keep constantly raising them. But this wasn't, myself included, but this wasn't something that people were like, oh, let's talk about this. So those are some of the things I think we need to start fixing things as we go along. But we sometimes seem to respond, but we're never
Reactive, man.
proactive. We're
You're
very
very
reactive
reactive
to everything.
all the time.
Rather than thinking, okay, how is this going to look 5-10 years from now? How is this going to look beyond me? Because there's also another issue. People like things to work when they're around, seemingly. And when they leave, they want, when I was there, it was fine. No. That's not a measure of success. Your measure is when you are
Sustainability,
gone,
man. Yeah,
exactly. That project has to keep going.
absolutely.
If that
But-
falls apart when you've gone, you've not done your job. You've done a poor job because it's dependent on you as an individual rather than creating systems. Creating
Absolutely.
systems that just keep going. Irrespective of who is in, who is out, it just works.
But some of that has to do with the maturity of our democracies.
Yeah.
though,
Yes, it does.
And the ability or inability for us to set national strategies that, irrespective of party, is a national strategy of development, as opposed to my party does this, but as soon as this next party come in, I can forget that there,
Yeah.
for how many years Sheraton they had in the backside because it was that party's that was doing
Exactly.
it. We ain't gonna finish it. Don't care about anything. We can go and do this other thing. I think they had a similar issue. Is it St. Lucia, the hospital, or what have you, that half done for years and that kind of stuff. A lot of it has to do with that maturity for us to set national strategy. It doesn't have to be in my lifetime or in this term of office that I see the result, but I know later on it will benefit the country as a whole.
Exactly.
And across the region, that seems to be an issue.
we
exactly.
can't escape the whole political cycle, and that's the
And
that's the
that's the
challenge
problem.
of our
Yeah.
local politicians. They cannot see beyond the electoral cycle. So therefore,
I
everything
think
that they step into seem to be, I need to do it very quickly. I can't have too wide a horizon.
I think part of fixing that, if we had fixed term for our prime ministers, so you can do 2 consecutive terms, so you're in for 5 and 5, 10 years, and then that's it. No more, no more. And we have fixed term elections. So
Until you get stuck with the wrong individual.
well, you won't be stuck because
Yeah,
it's
'cause you
up
can
to
still
the-
take them out after first term.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
you
you have,
still-
you have plenty of time, and I don't buy into that argument that there's not enough talent. Or suppose we can't. That's just foolishness. That's a whole
Listen,
load of rubbish.
That's
There's
wholeness,
enough
innit?
bright
Wholeness,
people.
they ain't got much. They ain't a small pool to choose leaders.
There's enough bright people in the Caribbean who can lead, who can take charge, who, given the opportunity and the chance, can do good for their country. So I don't buy into that you keep going and going and going and going and for what? If you as a leader or you as a policymaker, you've been unable within 10 years. Some people like to brag, oh, I've been in parliament for 40 years, 50 years. What have you
What
been
have you
doing?
done, though? What have you done?
Doing?
have you done?
What are
Yeah.
you doing? And if you ain't doing it in that 40 years, you think you can do it in the next 10?
Good point.
But really? Your achievement is that you staying around long, you warming a bed? I've been around. Around doing what? How
Yes.
do you measure what you're doing? And
True.
you keep going and going and going. So I think one, we need fixed terms for leadership. And 2, we also need fixed dates for elections so that the prime ministers or whoever the ruling party doesn't control the electoral calendar. We know every year, elections every 5 years or whatever, elections is on this date at this particular time. You can't be giving away things for elections, trying to sweeten people up. All that foolishness will stop because, well, they're in the sweeten up. We know the elections come in. We know that's the date. it just becomes part of life. You
It
just do
is what
what you
it
have to
is.
do.
Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
so it's an interesting journey, the whole cycle of Caribbean politics, and we want to examine this question of where Barbados is going next as a nation. And there are a lot of people in our audience who are watching today who might not necessarily understand some of the historical context around this, Ronnie. Because whilst, as Bajans, we are right in there, we are piling in and we are reacting to what we are seeing right now. Set out the journey a little bit for people and help them to understand how have we arrived at this point right now. Just give us the historical context, because I think that's really important for people to know.
Okay, in terms of where we are with our republic journey, as you're calling it, so you had the 1970s, you had the Cox Commission report looking at the issue of constitutional reform in Barbados. The issue of the republic came up at that particular point in time, and it was shelved because the majority of the country didn't seem to want it. They didn't think it was something to move forward with, so they didn't actually recommend the change. By the late 1990s, with the Ford Commission report, the issue came up again. And at that time, we were ready to move towards a republic. I don't know if you recall, there was the promise of a referendum
Yes.
by the
Indeed.
then BLP government under the leadership of Lord Arthur. And actually, there was a referendum bill
Yes, there
that was
was.
drafted, went to Parliament.
2005.
Yep. And then there was a draft new constitution. This is how far we got. A lot of people think that this is a draft, an entire new constitution was drafted. And due to, if I remember correctly, again, this is exactly what we're talking about. The electoral calendar and the cycle, it just didn't seem to match up to be an issue to put towards the voters at that time. And the idea was shelved. So we've done all of that work. We've got as far as a draft new constitution, and it was shelved. Now, previous Prime Minister Stewart promised and moved as well to a republic. Obviously, that never materialized because there was no articulation of what that would entail, whether it was a referendum, new constitution. It was just a very wide, varied, we're going to move to a republic, which is something most prime ministers have said at some point. Prime Minister Motley made the articulation, set a deadline, and then formed the Republic Transition Committee. But what was very interesting and different about the approach, and I think slightly odd in my opinion, is that there was a kind of dismembering between constitutional reform and removing the Queen as head of state. So what you have in Barbados is this two-step process where we're going to remove the Queen as head of state, which everyone can agree with. And then 2 years later, we're supposed to have constitution reform. But what it means, and it's a very odd thing, maybe it's a very Bajan way of doing things. It means in name and symbol, we will become a republic. If you appreciate that a republic simply means that you don't have a monarch, although there's arguments that we've been a republic since 1966, and I can agree with those arguments. But at the same point, I do agree we remove the Queen. But what it does mean is that we're going to become a republic with the same old independence constitution that we've got so many faults with. So it's really odd. So you've got a new coat of paint, but the building's still rotten and it's still falling down. But you can celebrate it as really, really big. So it's a really weird change because and some of us have been arguing. So why don't you just make the whole constitutional change? You already have a draft constitution. You don't have to start from scratch. Put that out to public and say what in this when we did it in 2005 still makes sense. Let's start. So there's a document, have a constitutional convention, hammer it out over the next year and a half or so, and then present a new constitution, a new republic. So when we become a republic, we're a republic in every sense of the way. By name, symbol, substance.
All right. So hold on. So step back a second. Step back a second. That's a lot. That's a lot. So and thanks for that.
we can unpack that.
We can unpack that. Right.
As I tell my students, let's unpack that.
Yeah, let's
so where do you
unpack.
want to start?
So let me start. Let me go back. Becoming a republic.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So the simple and probably the most accepted understanding is that becoming a republic means that you don't have a monarch. So the idea is that you have what we call limited government, government for the people, by the people, of the people.
Of the people.
At the source of your government and the source of everything is the electorate. We have this representative form of government, and the Queen is not of our head of state. That's one set of arguments. The other set of arguments are that countries in the Caribbean who got independence were republics at that moment, because we've always had limited government, representative government from 1966. The UK had no official, legal, constitutional, other role to play. So really, the Queen was a kind of titular symbol, not even a symbol, because
it's a figurehead.
But when you read the Constitution, actually, the Constitution does not necessarily make room for the Queen.
No,
there are articulations about oaths and things like that, but there is no real legal specific role for the Queen. There are roles for the Governor General as representative of the Queen. I understand that. I appreciate that. I accept that. That's what it says. But we, put it this way, we can't appropriate the Queen. The Queen of Britain is the Queen of Britain. So in effect, our Constitution could not make that appropriation. So their arguments, therefore, at 1966, Barbados was already a republic, because we had all the characteristics and things of a republic: limited government, representative government, free voting, a constitution, freedom of speech, etc., etc.
Yeah. So good. So further unpacking, head of state.
Yeah.
Some people might say, but that's the prime minister. Yes, we know they got a governor general. So do you need to replace one head of state, figurehead head of state, with another? Why can't you just do away with the whole thing and just have a prime minister, call it Wally, and let me get on the road?
Well, that's an interesting question, because that's why some persons like myself and others have articulated, let's have a holistic discussion. Because who says that we want our republic, as you rightly say, to have two
why you need a president for?
Why you need a president if, in effect, the prime minister as head of government, because don't forget, we have a switch. We have head of state, governor general, who will become now the president, and we have head of government, which is the prime minister. But in effect, the prime minister, we know, runs the entire show. There are moments where the governor general does have discretion, so let's not discount the governor general as merely when addressing our ceremonial. Because when you read the Constitution carefully, there are lots of positions of power and discretionary power that the Governor General will have in our Constitution, and the President will have these same powers.
So hang on.
But by a larger measure, it's a position of symbol and ceremony.
So to draw some comparison then, how does it compare to Guyana and Trinidad, for example?
So Trinidad, I think our system is probably more comparable to the Trinidad system in that we will have a kind of ceremonial head of state figure. Whereas when you look at Guyana, they have a more developed presidential executive type system there. So Guyana is probably the most different of all the Caribbean countries, and in some ways, the Guyana's constitution is very progressive. Their I won't get into all details. For example, like their constitution defines what's consultation. So for example, when you think about the Barbados constitution, there are lots of points where it says the prime minister has to consult or do X and Y and Z, but there's no definition. And then, in effect, in our system, that could mean the prime minister see you in Parliament Yard and say, "Look, I appointed so and so." I'm telling you,
exactly. Consult really don't mean, and you have a say in the decision. Consult just mean that I tell you.
In the Guyanese constitution, they actually have a definition and a process that you have to follow of what consultation is, and it's really, it's constitution, it's beautiful to see because it means that there are steps to what this means. It's a full articulation of that process, and even other more progressive bits about the Guyanese constitution. So when Guyana became a republic, a lot of people don't recognize how progressive Guyana has always been in some instances. When they became a republic, they did away with the Privy Council, so they established their own Final Court of Appeal in Guyana, whereas Trinidad, when they became a republic, kept the Privy Council, and actually Trinidad still keeps the Privy Council to this day. So when the CCJ was inaugurated, Guyana joined or switched to the CCJ, and it says a lot about Guyana's commitment to regional integration. And we often overlook it.
Fabulous.
We always overlook Guyana and its progressive constitution and its commitment, because Guyana for years has been operating, having their own Final Court of Appeal. When they became a republic, they were like, we're done with that. And that was a big move. Because
Yeah.
think about Trinidad, they weren't bold enough to do that. They were like, "Oh, we'll keep the Privy Council." And
But let
then
me
when we
but let me
got
hold
the
on this a little bit.
exactly, and when we got the CCJ, Trinidad still hasn't joined, although the court's in their country.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
according to yeah.
Twisted.
This
So,
is a weird one.
so you
Well, no,
very
that is
Caribbean way of doing things. I don't.
no.
So this,
Is
I've been trying to come up with a phrase, and I'm trying it out with my students. It's kind of
So
backwards and forwards at the same time. I don't know
backward
how
and
you all.
forwards.
yeah.
like,
So just to underline that a second, because I think this is something that I think a lot of people have questions about and talk about, and this is why the consultation with people is important to me,
Yeah.
and the communication with people about where we're going and what it is. So again, just underlining the definitions and how the construct could be. So you could turn republic and have no president, just everything vested in prime minister as it is now, and your prime minister is your head of state, your head of government, everything.
Yeah. You don't need to divide. You don't need to divide the offices. So the prime
Right.
minister could take on the ceremonial roles of visiting people when they become 100 and
Or appoint somebody to
all
do
this
that.
thing.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
appoint
or
somebody
yeah.
to do that.
So
Yes.
so you could do that. Although there are arguments that you don't want to give the office of the prime minister any more power, and actually we should be thinking about how to remove some of the powers to create more checks and balances. So
Yeah.
it depends on that. That's why the debate's important. Which is
Yes, I
which
agree.
is what I find really odd. So you've agreed on the form of the head of state, and then you're going to come and have a constitution discussion. But some of that very discussion that we may have later on may require us going back. To review the type of head of state that we want
Exactly.
and the type of republic that we're supposed to become. And I think a lot of people are so excited for the removal of the queen, and that kind of last link to what they see as colonialism, etc. I get it. I get some people want to see this in their lifetime. I am so sympathetic, empathetic, every type pathetic towards them because I know that they've waited a long time for this.
Yeah.
And maybe it's generational. I appreciate the waiting, but I am actually, why don't we do this and do this properly?
So hang on.
Half dig in with this.
On that point, then, because you've told us about the approach that the government of Barbados is taking, which is back to front or whatever.
Yeah.
What is what you would call the standard approach or the methodology that you would have expected to see in this space then?
I think the approach would have been similar to what every other country what Guyana did. You have a whole new constitution. Actually, we had that approach when we did it in 2004 when you had a final constitution. The idea was to go republic, a referendum. Do you want a republic? Yay, nay. And then the draft constitution was ready to roll out on the event that it said yes. And actually, the draft constitution, I assume, would have been circulated prior to the referendum, so people would have appreciation of what we were trying to do or what we weren't trying to do at that particular point. So I think that approach was the right one. So I find this one odd. And even if there are other countries that have tried this, I'm not sure it makes sense for us, given that what you're going to have a constitution, an independence constitution with a republic kind of dressing on it. But all the things in the constitution that people find offensive are still going to be there. So take, for example, people get hot and sweaty about the oaths. The members of parliament and ministers have to repeat this oath to the queen, her heirs, and her successors. People get hot and sweaty about having the governor general as the representative, etc., and how no Bajan boy or girl can become head of state.
Yeah.
And I'm like, have you actually ever read the Constitution? The preamble of the Barbados Constitution is one of the most offensive, racist, backward settings for a constitution because it only tells the constitution of the white European colonies. There's no reference in our preamble talking about us in terms of the ownership of our country. We are left out the story. You're hot and sweaty about an oath, but you're not hot and sweaty about what is in the actual document that represents us is going to say, and you're okay to become a republic. Fine, I want to become a republic, but all the other things in that constitution that we find offensive are still there. but
Yeah.
you're gonna waive, or we don't have to say oaths anymore. Again, it's just this idea. We just pay so much attention to form and symbol and flag. For what is the substantive issues that we need to really delve into to give us ownership of our country, give us ownership of who we are, if that's the expression that we want to use. So it's okay to get hot and sweaty about the oath, but you're hot and sweaty about the preamble. I don't understand how do you align and hold the contradictions, because they're contradictory in your head. So I'm going to remove one offensive thing, but the rest, I all right with the rest. That offend me too, but if you're going to remove one, remove all.
Yeah. Did I read somewhere that there is no provision for a referendum in the current constitution of Barbados? Is that right?
That's correct. So different
is that
constitutions. Go ahead.
so is that part of the proviso of maybe why we are seeing the approach we are? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Well, yes and no. So there's no provision for referendum in our constitution. Other Caribbean countries have that, what we call entrenchment provisions. So if you try to change the constitution, certain things have to kick in. Some will have referendums. Some, for example, would say when you introduce the reform bill, there's a 3 or 6 month period of debate. So, for example, like how the government just introduced the amendment bill, and in 2 weeks it's debated and it could be passed. That wouldn't happen in other Caribbean countries. The point is that we need time to reflect, because they view the constitution as so sacrosanct, so important.
So
if you're trying to amend it, there has to be a period that you give us all time to kind of digest what you're trying to do and decide whether we approve, and whether I would say we, the people, and then we will pressure our representatives to say, we don't like that. You better don't vote for that parliament. Because if you vote for that parliament, you just remember you will come back to me.
Yeah. So why this light touch approach in Barbados?
So I saw someone just say we've never done anything with referendums, and that's correct. But that can never be a reason for not doing anything. There are lots of things we never used to do.
True.
If you want to change, you change. People always talk about referendums and how they're going to fail, etc., etc. And I've said this before in other programs. If we had a referendum and it failed, and majority of Barbadians said they did not want to become a republic for whatever reason that they hold, I would be sad, I would be upset, but I would have to accept that's the will of the people at that particular point. And I would take it to say that people like myself who wanted a republic, we did not do the groundwork. We did not work hard enough to convince you. I'm not going to blame the tool, or I'm not going to blame the people, because it's not their fault. The referendum is just a tool. People are like, the referendums always fail. Well, if you don't do the work, what do you think will happen? You try to put some of these people, you don't educate them, you don't get out there and do what you want to know, and do and then it fails, and then you're like, it fails. We can't have referendums ever. Referendums are really bad. It's not the referendum that's the problem. You got to put in the work. You put in the work, you get nothing.
Yeah, and it's not that referendums feel yes or no. It is the fact that it is good governance and it is true democracy. And if that's what we want, let's exercise it. Let's do it. It's not in the constitution to say we have to, but if we're saying this is a new era of politics, let's do it.
And even if we don't have a referendum, I would hold my hands up. I started a petition to get a referendum, because I am old school. And obviously you can't hit the pavement in the streets and get your little booklet and get people to sign these days. So it's online. And because I felt strongly about it. But if we didn't have a referendum and the view was, okay, let's have widespread consultation, I could have lived with that. I could have lived with anything more than what we've got now, which is nothing, because the decision was already made on the type of republic that we're going to have. And there's nothing we can do about it at this point, because unless we pressure our representatives, but nobody's going to do that. Our representatives went to parliament and they will fall in line with what is official government policy. None of them, I would put money on it, will speak out of turn. They will all say what a glorious moment it is. I could parrot the speech. This is a glorious moment for Barbados. This is a moment of leadership. This is who we are. This will signal to the world that we are ready to take on the mantle of leadership and
But you
become and take our space in the world of leadership movement. Is that not it?
you sound like you're rehearsing for
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
you know. That sound too clean.
No,
That
Or
sound
he's
no,
a
too
no,
speech
no.
clean.
writer. He sound like
I used to do a little bit of speech writing,
he sound like he's a speech writer.
Man, no, he rehearsing,
but
rehearsing there for something.
you're just like, why? We are a
But
country since independence. We've been responsible for who we are. We've always known who we are. I don't buy these arguments. I think they're a load of hogwash that somehow this November we're gonna figure out that we're Barbadians. I'm like, really? So you didn't recognize for the last 50 something years that you were Barbadian and that the nation that we were trying to build? It's almost like we're just dismissing everything that happened because now we've removed
The
the
Queen.
queen. We finally know who we are. No, I know who I am. I am Barbadian. I understand what that means. And if the government is unclear of what that means in its articulation, don't force your misunderstanding upon the rest of us, or this is who we are. No, we know for who we are.
But this whole point about the Queen's removal and the influence of Great Britain is an interesting one
Yeah.
because perhaps the biggest thing against a referendum in Barbados, parking the constitution to one side for a moment, is something called Brexit that happened in Great Britain in 2016, where David Cameron was probably very confident that he was going to win that vote quite easily. But the reality is, the reality is, when you're looking on from afar in Barbados as a leader, and you're seeing how something like that fell apart so catastrophically, it might have a little bit of influence on your thinking, don't you
So you
think,
think it's
Ronnie?
fair?
I don't think it's fair, and I'll tell you why it's not fair.
Why not?
I think Brexit had very peculiar, particular circumstances, which a lot of people don't. Even the people now don't understand what happened, and I'll tell you what happened. And this is from personal interactions. This is from watching. This is I was in the UK at that point as well, and there was put it this way, for a long time, Labour has taken the north of England for granted. And there's an interesting documentary. I wish I could remember it right now, but it's going to come to me at some point. And when some of these people were asked their views, and this is why I talk about consultation is important. When they were asked their views on Brexit, a lot of them said that is the first time anybody had actually wanted to hear what they had to say. The first time a politician, a policymaker in ages came to their door, knocked on it, and wanted to hear what they had to say.
Right.
And the Leave campaign was effective at tapping in on the emotions, not the big rhetoric, not the whole this is global Britain, immigration is great, everything is working rhetoric. This is like, let us find out where these people are and what their issues are, what their fears are, and let us work on that. And that's what happened in Brexit. Again, if you have a good campaign, you can win. The Remain campaign was weak. It was a poor campaign. It was disorganized. There was no one set of campaign. You had Labour Remain, Conservative Remain. Everybody was kind of jostling for leadership. You have across the border, you had Gordon Brown basically leading the Scottish sector. You had David Cameron. It was just a mess. Whereas when you look to the Leave campaign, it was a solid single message. Whether you agree with the message, whether you thought the message was wrong, whether you thought they misconstrued the facts, that does not matter. I am just talking pure politics here. I'm talking about winning. And they had a campaign that won. So the message from that is, if you want to win, make sure your campaign is good.
But I'm talking about the politics of contagion. Go ahead, Dre. Because
I don't think there's contagion. I don't think there's any contagion there. And people that recognize these people in the north there were a lot of misgivings and feelings that they used Brexit to express. Brexit wasn't probably the issue, but there were real concerns that they felt left behind by the South. And there's this real north-south divide in England. They felt globalization was working for London and the people in Chelsea and and all the people in Highgate and all these fancy places in the north of London and all those places. But when you came to the hardcore north, once you left the motorway and you start to get into real what people might call real England,
Real Britain.
rare Britain, they had issues. They felt left behind for years. They felt no one was listening. They're like, "What is globalization thing? What y'all talking about? This integration and technology? What does this mean?" Well, I don't understand any of this. I just want my hospital waiting times to be down.
Yeah.
I just want my patient to be delivered, and I want to go to my pub on the weekend. And do what I have to do.
Yeah, and I feel in relation to a referendum in Barbados, I feel one should have been done. Personally, I think, and that's me saying that, despite me saying as well, I 100% agree with becoming a republic. But that's not the issue for me. The issue
Yeah.
is governance, democracy,
Exactly. Same
and
here.
leadership and communication. So that's
here.
my issue where that's concerned. I think it would have been an easy referendum to win.
Yeah, I
As
think
well.
so.
But one of the issues too that is coming up in this conversation about Barbados becoming a republic is time and timing.
Oh yeah.
Why so fast, despite all the stuff that happened in the 70s and coming all up to the 90s and the previous administration and stuff? It feel for many as if it was just a decision, and this is when we doing it, and this is what we doing, and we going. What are your thoughts on that, and what do people generally feel about time and timing? How fast it happened in one, and then the timing of it as well.
All right, so I think there's a little bit. I think we did a little bit of nuance in that because people often say it looks like it's rushed. I'm not sure that that's true because the decision has been allowing the process
Yes.
of us getting there. So it's not about rushing to become a republic. I don't contend with that view. I've said that before, and if it's one thing you'll come to recognize about me, Andre and Mark, consistency is my hallmark. So I've said that before. What I do think, however, is that there should have been a leading process to allow persons to be able to air their views and be consulted on the form of republic. I know people say we're being consulted on, for example, the charter. So they always say, well, when you say there's no consultation, that's not true. I think people who make that argument are slightly disingenuous because they know I'm not talking about wide consultation on the charter. I'm talking about very specific consultation to do with the type of republic that we were going to become and constitutional reform. So we have consultation as it comes to a charter that will probably be not worth the paper it's written on.
It's just
I won't say certain things because this is probably a family audience. Where's Scarlett? This is not after 9.
We appreciate that, but we probably think the same thing. Wait to the watershed.
Exactly. In the UK, you have the watershed period, and then all of a sudden you can let loose. So we're not in the watershed period. So you're consulting, and this is really interesting. Like, I want people to kind of stick with us as we unpack these issues. This is really interesting. So you're consulting on a document that is largely meaningless, but the parts that are meaningful and that could actually affect the substance of how the constitution, the country will function, you don't want to consult on.
But isn't the view you're consulting on that 2 years later?
But that's coming.
No,
That's coming?
That's coming 2 years later, but there's a consultation going on now.
Yeah, I know that one. But
on the draft charter.
On the draft charter.
yeah, I saw that.
And the view is that somehow some of this stuff from the draft charter is supposed to feed into the constitutional reform. But when you look at the draft charter, it is poorly drafted. One, I don't even want to get into the legal semantics of how poor the document is. And I know others on social media have talked about that before. So, and then the purpose of there are plenty of examples out there of charters that they could have looked to and lifted if they wanted. You just Google charters and you can find South Africa. There's plenty. There's plenty of charters. The charter, even if it doesn't or it's not supposed to have full legal meaning, should have been properly drafted and properly prepared. Because what I fear it's not even a fear. if you draft this charter becomes, and you're claiming that it's supposed to inform the new constitution, this charter becomes kind of a background document. And courts in the future may have to even use the charter to try to understand what bits of the constitution are going to say or how it relates. So that's why I'm saying you should pay attention, because although it doesn't have legal meaning on its own, it could lend to something else later on that has legal meaning.
But wouldn't you expect that nuance between the charter and whatever reform constitution comes forward is going to be part of the process that follows?
I don't make any assumptions about this process because it's been in my view. Yeah, and in my view, y'all just want to get me in trouble this week.
Talk your talk.
Trouble seems to find me anyway, so So I think the process has been poorly handled from the get-go. And I think maybe perhaps the reason the process was poorly handled is that I don't think the government expected anyone or Barbadians to be interested in push back. And it's not that people are pushing back against Barbados becoming a republic. People agree we should become a republic. They're saying, but I still want to say in how that turns out. Even if they want to keep the ceremonial head of state, they're like, I still want to be asked. And that, to see that question I talked about Brexit, again, people like to be asked. They just want.
I think it's more than that, right? I think it's more than people want to be asked, I think there is a relative real fear among some elements in the Bajan society that republic means Venezuela. Republic means Trinidad 1990. Republic means Guyana and Forest Burnham. Republic means something that there's this thing that we have this protection, like a dome of some kind of protection being under the queen, and to step out from under that means that this thing could go haywire, and within 2 years we got a coup or got this or got that. Many people actually believe that republic is synonymous with these things.
No, and that's not necessarily fair on what a republic is, because obviously United States, actually that might not be a good example.
Yeah. I ain't know if they're gonna be wrong in 20 years, yeah.
United States is a republic. France is a republic. There are many examples of republics out there. I think so. I'm not sure that is totally fair, but that's what a republic means.
I agree, but there's still this connection that people are making.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily true, because the reality is that there's no necessary protection from the Queen or by staying as a kind of constitutional monarchy, if you like. The reality is we've been independent since 1966. The Queen plays no real role. In fact, in Barbados, actually, the Governor General under our current constitution is appointed by the Prime Minister. The Queen doesn't even make the decision. So when people talk about this, like somehow the Queen is involved, and the Buckingham Palace calls down and say, I don't like this, and that's not real. If you read the Independence Act of 1966, it makes it clear that no laws after 1966 were supposed to have effect in Barbados. The cord was cut. There was nothing. It was over. There was just that retention of the monarch, and I think that had a lot to do with sentiment and holding on to the